Oh, good evening, everybody. My goodness. This reminds me of my boyhood in New York. I don't know about the rest of the country, but the first Monday after Labor Day, some of the school children would start going back to school in New York. And then a week later, the second week, the public schools would open, and they'd all toddle back to school. And I enjoyed going to school very, very much. I looked forward to it, and it was a wonderful entertainment. So we're reminding ourselves that in New York City in the early days, the children used to go to school now. So, all right, do I have a copy of the Abhedananda original? Okay, brother, yes. We were having logistical, technical difficulties. But that's all right because we're just looking forward to what's going to happen. Today is a very special day. And we're going to get the reading material because the printer is not cooperating right now. It really is a special day. It's September 11th, 1893. And it could be said, possibly by some people that will be coming along in this whole 1,000 years, millennium, that this was the day that changed the world. In some real sense, it had a tremendous impact on civilization, on what in New York we call culture. Because Vivekananda, a young man, kept pushing himself to the end of the line of the speakers at the opening day of the Parliament of World's Religions in Chicago. He had butterflies in a way. He'd never really spoken in public before, anything like this. And as he sat there, he looked around and said to himself, said he, look at all these people, the gray beards of their time. They've all prepared written talks. And it hadn't even occurred to him to try to do something like that. But you know, it's very interesting what Vivekananda did when he had nothing to say the next day. This is a side of Vivekananda that we just simply love here, and it's not well enough known, this sort of thing. Mother would tell him what to say. Or perhaps sometimes a voice. But the Lord really gave him something to say on this occasion, September 11th, 1893, because what he did was nothing less than sew together the great oceans of experience and wisdom from entirely different angles of approach of the West and the East. That's what he did. Now today in India, as it so happens, starting at 6:30 a.m. our time, already the day's gone in India, 11 and a half hours different. But on September 11th, it was really very lovely. And I'm sure that it was received with some degree of modesty. The Ramakrishna Order of India was given a present, September 11th, 127 years ago. The Parliament of World's Religions gave them the opportunity to have a webinar. So from India, the hosting was done. 5 of our Swamis in America spoke. Oh, good Swami. Would you want to send them off? All right. We have a Swami who's already put in 3 full days today, and we're going to save him for next time, next Friday night, when you get to see him. So this thing was going on with 5 of our marvelous Swami speakers from this country, Boston and New York and Canada and Chicago. Swami Ashotmananda right there where Swamiji had spoken. And incidentally, Ashotmananda is now a member of the board of the Parliament of World's Religions. And our Vedananda is given credit around the world of having resuscitated the parliaments 100 years after the original one in 1993. There have been 7 modern ones. So all of these Swamis were talking, and then our Sarvastananda from London Swami, England Swami, and he's got links already with the United Nations, and they give this marvelous, how simple it seems, talks, each one of them, on the harmony of religions instead of whatever else is in second place. And then after they spoke, pretty much at the beginning, and the host Swami was, from the Indian center that was hosting it. And then a Sikh gentleman would speak, and a Jain lady. And it was all like they're in the parade. I mean, it was remarkable because there was no distance left in the heart of those from India and the Eastern experience of religion as being experiential. There was no distance left. They were just part of the parade. Oh, yeah, Vivekananda. So I found that thrilling, and it also happens to be the birthday of our beloved Swami Abhedananda, who spent 20 years in America. I think we should just dive in now. We might just take a moment of affirmation that the readings, this is not a class, this is when we get together and share the joy of being part of one family. And it's pretty exciting to see so much power in a simple way coming out of India now, because it was mentioned that one of the takeaways, if you will, from something that Sri Ramakrishna told Vivekananda as a young man, that Jiva is Shiva, that the common heart of humanity, which is seemingly individually represented in every soul, is actually nothing less than the shining infinity. So one should serve God in human beings as a worship, as a reverence. And Vivekananda was so specific. Yes, yes. Good to have the service in church. Where are you going to find God then? Most easily and most immediately embodied in the heart of human beings. So we got something going here, kids. And if I'm right that what Vivekananda did on that glorious day when he spoke of the harmony of religions and so forth was nothing less than to give us a new millennium. And this new millennium of spirituality, he said, this new energy will last for at least 1,000 years in all its vitality and vibrancy. And it will be, they speak about, like Mother's Day or the Year of the Woman. This is the millennium. I like to share this occasionally because I get pretty high on this sort of thing. A Swami, I mentioned this earlier this week in conversation, one Swami in India said this. So if two Swamis said it, I could say Swamis in India say it. But I'll guarantee, as we used to say on the frontier, that this is how the Swamis feel. Now this is pretty major if you think about the implications. We're talking 1,000 years, the embodiment of a whole new kind of culture, which is basically the waves of mysticism of the East crashing up on the rocks of the analytical world, which is what sort of survived from the Greek inheritance of the West. So what the Swami said was, and these days, 127 years on, I think we can perhaps understand that this means business. The survival of the human species depends upon the feminization of the planet. So basically, Mother hoisting up her sleeves, coming down, that's what happens. That's what Durga Puja is all about. And saying, all right, now we're going to solve some problems. And yes, you boys, you men, you sit over there and you sit over there. And don't fight. Now we're going to get to work. So in the spirit of the day, the spirit of this marvelous webinar, which grabbed the attention of the world this morning, that was at 11 o'clock. They had another speech. And we won't go into that in great detail right now, but I think we should, and we will have reason to later on in this year. A lady spoke and gave a speech, another speech. All we can think about in Vedanta is Vedananda. That's enough to, have us do our homework for the rest of the... An African-American lady gave a speech at the Parliament, which was wisdom personified, and the relevance of her speech, which was read out again or said out again today by a present-day African-American lady. You can't believe how on the mark it is. So we're going to have, for the Southern California Parliament of the World's Religions, November 1st, an event called Practicing the Presence. It's swell. People go inside themselves in the Parliament, and then panel, and then everybody. And I'm going to call it George Floyd Day. Either, my friends, we give the promise of humanity, the fulfillment of one's potential to everybody, or it's even possible we won't be able to give it to anybody. So we speak of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as inalienable, guaranteed rights by the laws of nature and nature's God. But don't you see, if we're going to give the guarantee of the right of life, then, my friends, we have to provide the means and the rationality, which means bringing population in balance with the great equation of survival over natural resources, over food. We have to bring this into front and center. So education, economic availability, potential, and just the dignity of standing in another man's shoes and turning around and seeing it from the woman and man's point of view of another part of the culture that has been systemically and systematically denied the very potential of living is a mandate. And yep, Vivekananda, September 11th, 1893, sat around a lake in Kashmir. Beautiful lake. Tontine was there, I think Sister Christine, Sister Nivedita, and said on that occasion that the new day is coming, which in American English translates so beautifully into the day of the sovereignty of the Spirit, the sovereignty of the people. And Vivekananda says, I will not stop until... This is the new millennium, friends. This is what happened on September 11th, 1893. I will not stop until every man, woman, and child knows that he and she are one with God. So, the universal outlook of the Vedantic religion, Swami Abhedananda, who spent 20 years in America and got to know us real well, and our issues and the things that were important to us and the way we look at life. Vivekananda himself said, as Buddha had a message for the East, I have a message for the West. So Abhedananda was addressing crowds of more than 1,000 people in Brooklyn, among other places. But this one now, he's back in back in India. An address of welcome, it says, presented by the Hindu citizens of Dhaka on the 21st of February 1922 at Raja Babu's Maidan, Dhaka, and so forth. Mr. President and the citizens of Dhaka, I thank you heartily for the warm reception and kind expressions that you've uttered this evening on this occasion of presenting an address of welcome to me. I thank you heartily also for the kindness you've shown toward me on other occasions during my visit to this city. I feel that I've come to the heart of the province of Bengal. This historic city of Dhaka has had its past, which is glorious. When I think of the people of this city who have done various kinds of works in literary lines and also in philanthropic lines, in the lines of domestic industry and other avocations, I feel proud of myself as being a fellow citizen of this province of Bengal, the motherland. He's just returned home. I consider it a great privilege to me to be present at this meeting and to express the work that I've done in foreign countries for the last 25 years. Now it's 25. In other words, he came right over. Swamiji asked him to. I've spent the best part of my life to spread Sanatana Dharma, in italics, which we have inherited from our ancient rishis. Now, Sanatana Dharma translates out also marvelously. You know, any Indian expression, Dharma, truth, and they got 40 different definitions. And you try it sometime if you want. To me, the Unabridged Dictionary is a sacred book. It should be on a table. Big one. You know, Webster 2, whatever. Open. Almost with a candle next to it. Maybe unlit till you want to read it. The American Dictionary is very sparse when it comes to big words. You see sometime for fun. Truth. Liberty. But India just hauls away, Joe, and gives you 40 different words for the one. So Sanatana Dharma could be understood to mean what Aldous Huxley decided to call it, the perennial philosophy. The kind of statement that Martin of Tours, I love to quote him, 397 AD, much too long ago for the West to be talking like this, he said, all mystics come from the same country and speak the same language. So Sanatana Dharma is the language of mystics. And they're ancient. And when the human species discovered the value of meditation, that's when one of those lights went on. And it really is what separates us from the beasts. Yeah, everything's Brahman. We think the animals also have Atman. But it seems that the only creatures that receive illumination and the ultimate experience of their oneness with God are human. So when our boy says that the mystics say we're one country and one language, that was made, embodied, and demonstrated by Sri Ramakrishna because he climbed the mountain of all the faiths that were available to him, went into the complete, absolute union with God, with Brahman, with his shining infinity, comes down from the mountain like Moses, who wist not that the skin of his face shone, and says, the ultimate experience is one. So Sanatana Dharma is the eternal religion It is the very essence of religion, because Vivekananda again says every little denomination starts with a shower of experience upon someone and from within someone. Some woman gets inspired in France, and we get the Shakers. Every denomination's birth starts in the mystical experience. So what do we mean by mysticism? Well, to me, it's rather simple. It's a story we said in Australia, one of the parliaments, called a simple monk's faith or a monk's simple faith. Monks should all be, monastics should all be mystics. They are mystics. By which I mean he and she who invite the divine presence within their soul, within their heart, as love and light. So that's the Sanatana Dharma. And frankly, it's the world's religion before all of the great religions. You know, there are two great centers that we can think of. Mother of religions, one's India, the other's Israel. So the great three Abrahamic faiths that really are just three great trunks of one tree, Father God, in direct communion. These three had a different approach. This is a marvelous approach. And before them, all of the religions of the world, whereas the indigenous people say Father God and Mother Earth. God immanent, God light, God the universe, and God transcendent, which is symbolized in India different ways. I happen to like the one that Vivekananda might be giving. If someone said, well, everybody's sitting down, how do you think of God? How do you think of God? Golap Ma thinks of God as Krishna resting on her arm as a baby. Vivekananda, well, I say, if I have to say anything at all, I kind of like the one of seeing God as Shiva sitting in the Himalayas, Mount Kailash, the roof of the world, with the stars so close and big and bright, you could pluck them out of the sky. And then he sits down, closes his eyes, and sees the light of 1,000,000 suns. Sanatana Dharma, my friend, is Sky Father and Earth Mother, or Mother Light. What it means is infinity within, which is joy, the oneness with the divine infinity. That's Atman. And Brahman is the all, what Rudolf also calls the mysterium tremendum. Mysterium fascinans, Atman, inside. Mysterium tremendum, yeah, the all, which means outside too, as we think of it. And that Father God is the one that the Abrahamic religions decided, this is going to be my path. And India has both, also a little baby. All right. I've spent the best part of my life to spread Sanatana Dharma, which we've inherited from our ancient rishis, the mystics that sat up on top of the mountains above the timberline and went into meditation, and to help humanity irrespective of their caste, creed, and nationality. Do you realize what great motif, mottos these are? These are flag standard statements. This is the kind of thing you'd expect to hear out of the Parliament of Religions, 1893. Oh yeah, there's one other little thing I love to mention at the beginning of the year. Why don't we do it? So the Sky Father in Sanskrit is pronounced in our language, Dayus Pitar. And then we spell it out, transliterate it, Dyauspittar, the Sky Father. Now you bebop over to Greece, the Indo-European European languages, and that becomes Zeus Pater. Father Zeus. In Rome, becomes Jupiter. Who knew? And in Norway, it becomes Tu, T-I-U, which is from whence we get Tuesday. Isn't it wonderful? Vivekananda says there's joy in unity, the 5 fingers of the hand. And now we're getting the rest of the whole story. Starting in 1893 on September 11th, the opening day of the Parliament of Religions, from the East. Through our labors, India has been raised in the estimation of the Western people. He means Vivekananda himself and Sardananda, 5 direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna came to America. And 4 of them were in Swamiji House in South Pasadena, where Swami Vivekananda lived. Where one of the sisters whose home this very room, this very house was in 1900, then in 1929 she lived here in her brother's home. Entertained and hosted Vivekananda, whom, when he was sitting in their living room talking, one lady said, hey, this is experience. This is not theology. This is what the woman said. She felt that she was talking to Jesus. That is to say, she felt it was as if a man of the superluminary quality of experience of Jesus, I and my Father are one, was there right there in their living room in the presence of Vivekananda. So he says, it's been raised in the estimation of Western people by these 5 direct disciples, especially the American people. Today you find hundreds of young students. This is a great way to begin kick the year off here, who are studying in the United States of America. I went there in 1897. And then I was the only one Hindu in the whole continent. And I had to fight tooth and nail to correct the misrepresentations which were started by the American missionaries. You know, like God love them. When these missionaries return to America from our motherland, they give the wrong ideas, which are really incorrect. I'll give you an illustration of one of the methods of raising funds which are generally adopted by these missionaries. Some of them. Really, they adopt the method of misrepresentation. Oh, he's on a roll tonight. He's at home and among friends. I noticed that there were textbooks in the Sunday schools connected with different churches, and in those Sunday school books, there were pictures. Oh, no. It's a little hard on me, man. Because I'm American. Of the Hindu mothers throwing their babies into the Ganges to feed the crocodiles. What are you going to do? They came to correct a few misunderstandings here, misrepresentation. The mouth of the crocodile was open, and the mother was represented. Oh, this gets to be just childish, but realize he's got a sense of humor too. As a dark woman throwing a white babe at the mouth of that crocodile, and it was represented as the highest ideal of the Hindu religion. Now, because this is kind of funny, and because this is September 11th, oh my, how far we've come in 127 years. The Parliament of Religion is filled with people whose glasses are half full, not half empty, of spiritual experience from all around the world, speaking of the harmony and the love and the togetherness and the honor and the sanctity and the sensitivity to the different ways that this one unity is expressed, the different denominations, to protect them in their sanctity, the dignity, which we must now start seeing in the eyes and hearts of every person, like in this country. This is the job that's ahead of us, culture by culture. No one is exempt. And what we're going to do on November 1st, we're going to get in a room. Well, it'll be digital. And the people going to enter that room are going to go deep within for some self-examination to the depths of their feelings. And they're going to come out changed by standing in the shoes of the other person and seeing America. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy soul with self-control and law and liberty, something like that. From sea to shining sea, brotherhood, sisterhood. Remember what Swamiji started off with? That little boy, that young fella from India that didn't even write down a speech. He gets up on his hind legs there, the end of the crowd, with a few thousand people, and looked him straight in the eye. Had to. Because otherwise, why would he have gotten the response that he did? Said, sisters and brothers of America. Now, you talk about Americans, you know, you can fool some of them some of the time, and all of them some of the time, but as Abe Lincoln said, you can't fool all the people all the time. And I think Americans are pretty good, even though it's something new, signaling it out. Those people rose with those few words and gave Swamiji at least 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 maybe. They say two. A 3-minute standing ovation. That's the history of America since that day, and that's the future of America. And we're not going to stop till Swamiji's dream is realized. And in every village, even in Switzerland, whatever, walking down from the mountains will be a new kind of human being. They call them Homo sapiens now, meaning wise, which is a bit of a stretch. But the new species is going to be Homo mysticus. And there will be people in this country, in every village, who have said, yes, I have seen him. And you can too. That's what Vivekananda got out of Ramakrishna when he went to see him. Said, have you seen God? Everybody else kind of went around the mulberry bush, you know. He said, yes, I have. Not you have such a white, bright eyes young man, and there are those who say. Ramakrishna said, yes, I see him more clearly than I'm seeing you. So from then on, Vedanta's off to races, the horse is out of the barn, and the whole thing is to delineate between the apparent and the real. Even if 90% of our consciousness is of the apparent. I'm the body, I'm the mind, I'm this, I'm that, oh yeah. You know what the problem the human race has now? In the world of sense experience and all that. It's the feeling of superiority. And I find that a more telling phrase than saying supremacy. It's that subconscious, hidden, unconscious thought of superiority. When that man over there looking at you from 180 degrees, looking right in your eyes, is nothing less than Brahman. Nothing less than shining infinity, looking back at you as in a mirror. Are you going to give me a right to live? Are you going to give me the innate dignity, which is what spirit and liberty really is? Are you going to give me schools that I can educate my children? Are you going to give me a new understanding of my place in society so that family becomes everything? Raising a young child. His Holy Mother says, a child is blessed who at the age of 5 can offer a flower to God. Are you going to give me a decent wage for a decent day's work? Or are you going to give me the honor of seeing me and understanding that I too have that reflective glint that shines back? Vivekananda saw the facet of the diamond, all these facets shining back from every culture in the world. France, my goodness, Japan. And yes, he saw it in the hearts and minds of these simple, and I do mean simple, and I have the right to say so because I am one, Americans. So he's trying to fix it. When I first went to America, I was regarded as a heathen, a man that had known the highest level of nirvikalpa samadhi, union with God. I.e., that means id est in Latin. That is, an uncivilized savage. Well, he comes out straight talk. But through efforts, loving efforts, patience, and untiring perseverance, I succeeded in changing the ideas of the American people. I remember the occasion of the Parliament of Religions at Chicago. Dr. Burroughs was the president. In parentheses, he says, where our illustrious brother Swami Vivekananda represented the ancient philosophy, religion, and culture of India. I remembered that Dr. Burroughs mentioned in one of his discourses, now this is bold stuff. This isn't what we remember about the Parliament, but he was to take home the change, the seed that had been planted that day, September 11th, 1893, and how in 25 years it was growing into an understanding of the heart, especially among the mystics, of the unity of the spirit of humanity. All righty, here's Dr. Burroughs. God love him. I remember Dr. Burroughs mentioned in one of his discourses that the Hindus had neither morality nor religion nor philosophy, and whatever they have today they had learned from the Christian missionaries. But I had to contradict. Got an ant here that needs to find his way along in life. We'll just see how he's doing. Be all right. I understand they can join any hive when they find one. Okay, he said, but I had to contradict such a statement, and I showed the American people that it was not true. Truth is everything. Truth is all. Truth is nothing less, am I right? Sisters and brothers of America, than the first-hand direct knowledge and experience of reality. That's why it's so important. Ramakrishna was able to surrender everything else to Mother. Good, bad, different, wise, foolish. But he could not say, here is my truth, and here is my untruth. I surrender them both to thee. Truth, the very eyeglasses that you put on to see reality clearly. I had to contradict it. I showed the American people it's not true that the Hindus have learned what they have today in the lines of religion and philosophy from the missionaries, but on the contrary, oh boy, hold your hat, I have no idea what's coming. What the Christian missionaries regard as the highest philosophy and religion of Jesus the Christ, came from India. And that their holy baptism also came from the bank of the Ganges. Well, a great deal of present-day Christianity comes from India. Apparently the tonsure, the bald head and the top of the monks, that came from Buddhism. The rosary came from India, and quite a few other things. But the main thing is the spirit of mysticism was alive and well in Jesus, who was an identity. An identity, friends, think of it, with a shining infinity. He said so himself. Now, it gets to be kind of fun when you get into this new dispensation, this new millennium, because Ramakrishna, when he climbed all the mountain paths that were available to him, Islam, Christianity, all the different denominations, if you will, of India, and there are many, he saw the picture, Raphael, reproduction is in the San Francisco Center. I think it's circular, of Mother Mary holding Jesus in her arms and studying Christianity. He went into nirvikalpa samadhi, complete absolute unity of the mystical experience. That's what we call it. That's what mystics in the West call the search for union with God. He did it in 3 days. What took his teacher 40 years to do, he did in 3 days. But somewhere along this path of adoring Christianity, he sees a man coming toward him. Now again, my friends, this doesn't need to be a matter of debate, doesn't need to be a matter of discussion. He said he did. That's what you want to chew on. If you don't have any question, just understand he's saying direct experience, and I don't know. Anyway, a man coming toward him who he had not seen before. And he noticed that he was dressed in a long blue robe, and he noticed that he had slightly Semitic features. Something about his nose was a little flat. And this dear man, who is he? I can see by his face, his shining face. He's a knower of God. His identity was God. And he said, it's Jesus. And the man came to Sri Ramakrishna and embraced him and entered into him. Now, my friends, if we're not going to just say that by honoring the birth date and the death of Jesus, the Alpha and Omega, like bookends, and saying a few incantations, John 13, whatever, 360, that makes us a Christian. We're going to say that it's reading the whole story of Jesus' life between those bookends that may or may not, according to one's heart, make one feel that he's a Christian. She's a Christian. And I love these African American spirituals, because they show they got it. They got the deep inner essence of understanding of experience. He made me a Christian. No, he made me a watchman upon the city wall. And if I am a Christian, I am the least of all. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain, that Jesus Christ is born. Now that's the real McCoy. And I'll tell you the truth. It's alive and well. It sure was in 1893 in America. In every culture that professed itself to want to follow in Jesus' footsteps. Be ye doers of the word, and not just hearers only. So we did get quite a bit. We got the tonsure and we got the rosary and all that from India. I showed them that the parables and the teachings of Jesus the Christ, he showed them analogies with the teachings of Gautama Buddha, the founder of the great humanitarian religion known as Buddhism, say 600 BC, before the current era. I like to say way under BC. For 25 years. Now, here's a testimony of a man. He's talking to his friends. First time he's seen nothing but Indians in one room for 25 years. And it's from his heart. He's sharing something with them. He said, for 25 years, I've struggled with all my untiring efforts against odds and convinced the people that the philosophy of the Vedas and the Upanishads are among the highest philosophy of the whole world. I'm kind of editing this thing as I go. Because it's the truth. What did Jesus say about truth? Now you understand, Jesus was his own proofreader. I don't know what it is in, what's his name? Buddha spoke in Pali, the local dialect of his day. Jesus spoke in Aramaic. And Aramaic, it's amazing about the interrelation of people, is called Brahmi, the script that the mystical people, probably in the Babylonian captivity, took with them into the heart of the Middle East, of the Near East, and into the East, Babylonia, by the waters of Babylon. We sat down and wept in captivity again. You know what they call the weeping willow? The weeping willow is one of the grandest trees you'll ever see in your life, and I hope everyone's had a chance to be there in the presence of one, a big one. It's called Salix, S-A-L-Y-X. That's the genus of the willow tree from which we get salicylic acid, we get aspirin. And the species of the weeping willow, my friends, how experiential can you get, is Babylonica. By the waters of Babylon, for a rather long captivity, we sat down and wept. They also left the script. They left Hebrew. They spoke the language of Jesus, of course, before that time. And Brahmi, B-R-A-H-M-I, is the configuration from which Devanagari, when they finally decided to start writing the Indian religion down, all that Devanagari, you got to admit, it looks a lot more like Hebrew than it does like Greek and Roman letters. It's all from Israel, the script of the Indians. So this is a two-way street that we're talking about here. All right. The philosophy. Now let's see what he's trying to tell the home folks when he gets back home. Of the Vedas, he's speaking to them now, and the Upanishads contains the essence of all religions, mysticism, and holds the key to unlock the doors of wisdom among all nations, if they want to read them. I had the good fortune of coming in contact with Professor Max Muller, the translator of the Rig Veda. What does the Rig Veda say? The oldest scriptures, man, in the world. They're talking about real religion. It says, the truth is one. Sages call it by various names. And yes, we were talking before, what does Jesus say about the capital T truth? He said, ye shall know the truth, meaning experience it directly, and the truth shall make you free. I mean, this gets pretty simple when you get down. This kind of overview, starting off school again, all this together. Brahmananda makes things so simple. Vivekananda's great power. I've never seen such a friendship in the history of the world as was between these two, who approached things differently. Naturally did, because Vivekananda was at the top of the Himalayas, saying, come on up! Come on up! I did it. You can do it too. Find your true self at your highest self. And Brahmananda's down below us, I love to say, getting your horse ready. Saddling it up, cinching it real good onto the horse, so the saddle won't turn under and you'll be underneath, looking down at it. And saying, now look, giving you provisions, food, everything. 2 days' journey. The trail becomes very narrow. Hug the edge of the cliff and don't look down. Making sure you had all your provisions, saddlebags, everything. And Brahmananda then, with a big halloo like American Indian, slaps the horse on the behind. Hi! Get him up the mountain. And said, oh yes, one more thing. I ain't joking with you now. I ain't fooling with you now. He said one more thing. He said, oh yes, I'm coming with you. So obviously they're going to have different angles of view. They're looking at each other from the whole spectrum of spiritual life and experience and journeying. And they were the best friends the world has ever known. So Brahmananda is very simple. He said, look, it's real simple. The path of love, that's the path of love. Swami Prabhupada, the founder of this place, said, we have no excuse. We used to love it as babies. Love is the near end of experience, spiritual experience. It's the infrared. We feel it in our hearts. That's spiritual experience. And the path of knowledge, the ultraviolet. Brahmananda makes it so simple. It's all about direct experience. He said, well, that's light. Knowledge is light. What are we going to learn? When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn? Well, they've told us they're here, the ancient wisdom of the human species when they came to India, the land of sunshine, and saw these people sitting down cross-legged, meditating. What's that? They even have pictures of a proto-Shiva called Rudra. The Indus Valley, Mohenjo-Daro, and all those, they had meditate. And here come these fellows from the Indo-European language culture. And something happened, and the light went on, and they're sitting. The age of the rishis is ancient, above the timber line. I think I'll try it. I'm going to meditate up a little. I'll close my eye. Ooh, it's pretty. The world underneath the water, underneath the ocean, is more beautiful. The colors are more vivid than they are on top. Look what happened when these cultures blended before. Now what do we got? We got the whole world crashing up of mysticism of the East, direct experience. Hey, you know what they said about Vivekananda? He didn't have credentials for the parliament, remember? Just a boy. Oh, what is it? And so he had to go to Boston. It was the standard high cost of living in Chicago. Didn't have credentials, couldn't get in anyway. This, that, and the other. Ran into a fellow named Wright. W-R-I-G-H-T. Professor Greek. Zeus Pater. There was a tremendous mystical part of Greece. And he wrote back those people back in Chicago and said, asking this man for his credentials is like asking the sun for its credentials to shine. And then he said something that for personal and private reasons brings a smile to my face every time. And I love them all. All the citadels of learning. We got a lot of schools in this country. That's one of America's glories. He said, this man is more learned than all our Harvard professors put together. All right. Max Muller. And he's the one that figured this all out about Dias Piter and all that stuff. I also had the good fortune of meeting Professor Deussen of Kiel University, who wrote a book on the philosophy of the Upanishads. Deussen, these are great, they're great scholars. They're the best that the West had to offer in those days. And Deussen met Vivekananda, loved him. Perhaps you know that Professor Deussen was the only Sanskrit scholar in Europe who could speak in Sanskrit. It was he, I'm learning something now, who came to Bombay many years ago and delivered his address in Sanskrit. Wow. That just happens to light the fuse for me. But you'll be surprised to know that Professor Max Muller could not understand Sanskrit when I spoke to him in that language. He could read and write well in Sanskrit, but his ears were not trained to the sound of the Sanskrit words, and therefore he could not speak in Sanskrit. Do you happen to have a flower, brother? If you do, I'd like you to put it on top of the book. No. So we're off and running. Do you see what a glory the ocean of infinite wisdom really is? And it's this wonderful glory that the sages of India are inviting us to swim in. One of Ramakrishna's most telling images, and they were countrified images very often. They were parables, like the parables of Jesus. Swami Sarvadevananda, our now head Swami here, king number 3. I said we've had 3 head ministers since 1929. And I said, the names of the first 2, first king and second king, first kings and second king. And now we have king number 3. And soon after Swami Sarvadevananda came, Reader's Digest did a wonderful little movie, about the Jesus time and life and the people of those days. And he was moved. And that's all I ask in life, is somebody to be moved. I mean, that'll do it for me every time. They don't have to say nothing. I just want to see that the light's on and somebody's home and feeling something. I mean, everybody has his own path. To me, if you don't feel nothing, hey, that's not religion. That's algebra 3. That's something else. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel. It's direct experience, my friends. And it's not complicated. You sit down and you try to love God, and we have no excuse. We used to love as babies. And to give our crescendo for the evening, it's so glad to be with you again. Our founding Swami gave us 2 prayers. Jesus gave us 1 prayer. It's one of the greatest prayers we ever had. And our good colleague and friend, Quincy Coleman, has written something called The Great Prayer. You're going to have to hear it. We're going to have some way of putting it on the tube here. A few minutes prayer. It's Jesus' prayer. Swami gave us 2 prayers. I'm talking, kids, not about the Alpha or the Omega tonight. The birth and the death of our Lord. I'm talking about his life. The Battle Hymn of the Republic, great song, great anthem. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea. And the glory in his bosom transforms you and me. As he died to make men holy. Let's give it a new translation since 1860, my friends, and 1865. As he died to make men holy, let us live to make men free. Our God is marching on. God love you.